Marcus Daniels had never been the kind of student who expected things to come easy. 26 years old, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at a nursing home so he could attend college, wearing scrubs that were standard issue but somehow never fit quite right because they were designed for bodies that didn't look like his. The fabric pulled tight across his shoulders, muscles earned from years of loading dock work to pay for textbooks, and hung loose at the waist. But today, sitting in the sterile hallway outside Dr. Catherine Wexler's office at Riverside Medical College, Marcus wasn't thinking about how his scrubs fit. He was thinking about the grade that didn't make sense. Failed, 42%. On the advanced pathology final exam, the exam he'd studied for every night for 6 weeks. The exam whose questions he'd answered with the kind of precision that came from understanding, not memorization. The exam that would determine whether he stayed on track to graduate top of his class or fell behind, jeopardizing his residency placement at one of the top hospitals in the country. 42%. Marcus had scored in the 98th percentile on every exam for 3 years. He'd published research in peer-reviewed journals. He'd assisted on surgeries that fourth-year students weren't usually allowed near. And now, with 4 months until graduation, he'd supposedly failed an exam so badly that his academic advisor had called an emergency meeting. The door opened. Dr. Wexler stood there, 62 years old, silver hair pulled back in a bun that had probably looked the same for 30 years, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She'd been teaching pathology at Riverside for 3 decades. She'd trained some of the best doctors in the country, and right now, she looked confused. "Marcus, come in." He followed her into the office. The walls were lined with medical texts and framed certificates. A human skull sat on one corner of her desk, teaching tool, not decoration. And spread across her desk were exam papers. His exam papers. "Sit down," Dr. Wexler said, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone about to deliver news that didn't add up. Marcus Saturday. Dr. Wexler picked up his exam. 20 pages, multiple choice, short answer, and 3 essay questions. She flipped through it slowly, her expression unreadable. "Marcus, how do you think you did on this exam?" "Honestly, I thought I aced it. Every question felt right. Like I understood what you were asking and knew how to answer." "Walk me through question 15. The one about autoimmune pathology." Marcus closed his eyes, remembering. "You asked about the mechanism of systemic lupus erythematosus. I explained how anti-nuclear antibodies attack the body's own tissue. I discussed the complement cascade. I detailed the 3 primary diagnostic criteria and the differential diagnosis between SLE and other autoimmune conditions." Dr. Wexler was quiet for a moment. Then she turned his exam around so he could see it. Question 15 was marked wrong. 0 points out of 15 possible. But his answer, written in his own handwriting, detailed and precise, said exactly what he'd just described. Word for word. "That answer is perfect," Dr. Wexler said quietly. "It's not just correct, it's comprehensive. It's the kind of answer I'd use as an example for future students." Marcus stared at the red X, marking it wrong. "Then why?" "That's what I'm trying to understand." She flipped to another page. Question 23. Another perfect answer, another 0. Question 31. Perfect answer, 0 points. Page after page, Marcus's answers were flawless, and every single one was marked incorrect. "This doesn't make sense," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Who graded this?" Dr. Wexler hesitated. Just for a second. but Marcus caught it. The slight pause, the way her eyes flickered to her computer screen, the realization that she was about to say something that would change everything. "The exams are graded digitally," she said slowly. "Students write by hand, but then the answers are scanned and uploaded to our grading system. Teaching assistants input the correct answers, and the system compares them to what students wrote. It flags discrepancies for manual review." "So the computer graded this wrong?" "No. The computer would have marked these answers as correct. Someone manually overrode the system." She pulled up her computer screen, turned it toward him. "Every single one of your correct answers was changed to incorrect, manually, by someone with teaching assistant access." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "Who?" Dr. Wexler pulled up the access log. A name appeared. Christopher Beaumont. Teaching assistant. Date: October 15th, 2:47 a.m. Marcus knew that name. Christopher Beaumont, 27 years old, son of Senator Richard Beaumont, grandson of the Beaumont who donated the money for Riverside's new research wing. Fourth-year medical student who'd been Marcus's lab partner once and made it very clear he didn't appreciate being paired with someone who probably only got in through affirmative action. Christopher Beaumont, who was currently ranked second in their class, right behind Marcus Daniels, who was ranked first. "This was sabotage," Marcus said quietly. Dr. Wexler closed her laptop. "I'm not prepared to make that accusation without more evidence. But yes, someone with TA access deliberately changed your correct answers to incorrect ones. And I intend to find out exactly what happened and why." She stood. "For now, I'm voiding this exam score. You'll retake it next week. Private administration, just you and me. No digital system, no teaching assistants, just a test and honest grading." "What about Christopher Beaumont?" "Leave that to me. Academic misconduct is taken very seriously at Riverside. If he's responsible, there will be consequences." Marcus walked out of Dr. Wexler's office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. For 3 years, he'd believed that hard work mattered, that merit mattered, that if he was just smart enough, disciplined enough, excellent enough, he'd be treated fairly. But someone had looked at his perfect exam and decided he didn't deserve the grade he'd earned. Not because his answers were wrong, because Marcus Daniels, being the top student in his class, didn't fit the narrative someone else had written about who belonged at the top. And now Marcus had a decision to make. Take the retake quietly. Let Dr. Wexler handle it through proper channels. Trust the system to deliver justice. Or recognize that sometimes the system wasn't broken by accident, it was rigged on purpose. And the only way to fix it was to expose exactly how deep the sabotage went. Because if Christopher Beaumont had done this to him, how many other students had been sabotaged before? How many people of color had failed exams they should have passed? How many careers had been derailed by someone manually changing correct answers to incorrect ones? Marcus pulled out his phone and sent a text to the one person he knew would understand. His mother, the woman who'd worked double shifts for 20 years so her son could become a doctor. "Something happened. I need your advice." The response came immediately. "Come home. Tell me everything. We'll figure this out together." Marcus walked toward the parking lot, unaware that the next 72 hours would expose not just one act of sabotage, but a systematic pattern of discrimination that had been hidden in Riverside Medical College's grading system for years. Because sometimes the most dangerous racism isn't the kind that shouts, it's the kind that quietly changes your correct answers to wrong ones at 2:47 in the morning and hopes you'll never notice. Marcus's mother, Diane Daniels, lived in a modest two-bedroom apartment in the same neighborhood where she'd raised him. 53 years old, hands that still bore the calluses from decades of nursing home work, wearing the kind of comfortable clothes that said she'd earned the right to stop dressing to impress anyone. The walls were covered with photos of Marcus' high school graduation, college acceptance, white coat ceremony, evidence of a life built on sacrifice and determination. She listened to his story without interrupting, made him tea he didn't drink, waited until he'd finished before she spoke. "You said this Beaumont boy is ranked second in your class." "Yes." "And you're ranked first." "Yes." "And this exam would have kept you first." "Maybe widened the gap." Marcus nodded. "If I'd gotten the score my answers deserved, I'd have been so far ahead that graduation rankings would be locked in. I'd be valedictorian. Guaranteed." Diane was quiet for a moment. "Baby, I need to tell you something about why I left my last job." Marcus looked up. His mother had worked at Riverside Nursing and Rehabilitation for 18 years. She'd left 2 years ago, citing better opportunities at a different facility. But she'd never explained what those opportunities were, and Marcus had been too deep in his studies to press. "I didn't leave for better opportunities," Diane said. "I was forced out by a supervisor who decided that having a black woman in charge of the overnight nursing staff didn't fit the image the facility wanted to project to wealthy families. Mom, let me finish. This supervisor, she couldn't fire me outright. My record was spotless. So she did something else. She started changing my documentation. Patient care logs I'd written perfectly. She'd wait until I left for the night, then go into the digital system and alter my entries, make it look like I was making mistakes, forgetting medications, missing vital signs. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "That's exactly what Beaumont did to my exam. I know, that's why I'm telling you this. Because when I finally caught her, when I found the access logs showing her edits, I reported it through proper channels, went to HR, went to administration, followed every rule. What happened? They investigated for 3 months, during which time I was placed on administrative leave. No pay, no benefits. Just sit at home and wait while they decided whether to believe a black nurse with 18 years of perfect service or a white supervisor with family connections. They chose her. They chose her. Said there wasn't enough evidence. Said the changes could have been system errors. Offered me a severance package if I agreed not to sue." Diane met his eyes. "I took the severance because I was 51 years old with no savings and a son in medical school who needed books and rent money. So I took their money and I left quietly." Marcus had never known. "I'm sorry, Mom." "Don't be sorry. Learn. Because when you go after Christopher Beaumont and baby, you need to go after him. You need to understand that people like him have protection. They have family money and connections, and the assumption that they deserve to win. You have truth and evidence, and the inconvenient fact that your skin color makes people doubt you, even when you're right. Dr. Wexler believes me. Dr. Wexler is one person. How many people on that medical school board? How many of them have taken donations from Senator Beaumont? How many of them play golf with his father?" Diane leaned forward. "I'm not telling you not to fight. I'm telling you to fight smart. Get evidence that can't be dismissed. Find out if he's done this before. Build a case so strong that even family connections can't save him." But what Marcus didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that Christopher Beaumont hadn't just sabotaged one exam. He'd been systematically sabotaging minority students for 2 years. And Marcus was about to become the person who exposed all of it. Marcus spent the next 2 days doing something he'd never done before. He stopped studying for exams and started investigating. He began with the obvious question: had Christopher Beaumont changed other students' grades? Accessing the grading system logs required privileges Marcus didn't have. But he knew someone who did. Jamal Richardson, a third-year student, who worked part-time in the IT department to help pay tuition. They'd been study partners during first year, back when Marcus was still learning how to navigate being one of 7 black students in a class of 120. Marcus found Jamal in the computer lab at 11 p.m., surrounded by monitors and empty coffee cups. "I need a favor," Marcus said. "The kind that might get you in trouble." Jamal looked up. "How much trouble?" "Academic misconduct investigation trouble. Maybe legal trouble if it goes far enough." "What happened?" Marcus explained. "The exam. The perfect answers marked wrong. Christopher Beaumont's access log at 2:47 in the morning." Jamal's expression shifted from surprise to recognition to anger. "He's done this before." "You know that?" "I suspected, but I couldn't prove it." Jamal pulled up a database. 3 months ago, Angela Torres came to me, said her biochemistry final didn't make sense. She'd studied for weeks, knew the material cold, got a 63%. She asked if I could check the system logs to see if there were any errors. "Could you?" I could, but I wasn't supposed to. Accessing individual student records without authorization is grounds for termination. But Angela was crying, said failing that exam would cost her scholarship. So I looked. And Christopher Beaumont had accessed her exam at 3:15 a.m. the night before grades were posted. Modified 12 answers. All changes went from correct to incorrect. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Did Angela report it? She tried. Went to the dean. Dean said there was no evidence of deliberate sabotage. That the system sometimes has glitches. That Angela should consider whether she was really prepared for the rigor of medical school. Jamal's voice was bitter. "Angela is Dominican. First-generation college student. She ended up withdrawing from school rather than fight a battle she knew she'd lose." Jesus. Wait. It gets worse. Jamal pulled up more files. After Angela left, I started watching. Not actively hacking, just monitoring unusual access patterns. Christopher Beaumont has edited student exams 17 times in the past 2 years. Always between 2 and 4 a.m. Always students of color. Always changing correct answers to incorrect ones. Marcus stared at the data. 17 students. 17 cases of systematic sabotage. "Why didn't you report this?" "To who?" "I'm a third-year student working IT. Beaumont's father is a senator. His grandfather donated $10 million to this school. You think anyone would believe me over him?" Jamal met his eyes. "But now you have evidence too. Direct evidence. Your exam. Which means maybe finally someone will listen. I need copies of these logs." "That's illegal. Without proper authorization. Jamal, he's been destroying careers, forcing students out of school. All because he can't stand the idea of people of color succeeding in medicine." Jamal was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a USB drive. "This conversation never happened. I never gave you this. But if you take down Christopher Beaumont, make sure he can't hurt anyone else ever again. Stick around, because what Marcus is about to uncover will show you that sometimes racism isn't loud. Sometimes it's just someone at a keyboard at 3 a.m., quietly erasing your future one correct answer at a time." Marcus brought the evidence to Dr. Wexler the next morning: the USB drive, the access logs, the 17 students whose exams had been sabotaged over 2 years. Dr. Wexler's face went pale as she reviewed the data. This is systematic. This is criminal. Will the school investigate? They have to. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Christopher Beaumont's family has deep connections to this institution. His grandfather's donation built our research wing. His father sits on the board of trustees. Accusing him of this, proving it is going to create a firestorm. I don't care about the firestorm. I care about the truth. Dr. Wexler closed her laptop. I believe you, and I'm going to fight for you. But you need to be prepared for what comes next. Beaumont's family will hire lawyers. They'll claim the evidence was obtained illegally. They'll argue that system glitches are more likely than deliberate sabotage. They'll make this about you being a troublemaker rather than about him being a cheat. Let them try. Marcus, I'm serious. The school's reputation is on the line. If this becomes public, it's not just about one student cheating. It's about Riverside Medical College allowing systematic discrimination for years. They'll want to settle this quietly. Offer you a clean exam score, maybe a scholarship, in exchange for your silence. I'm not interested in silence. I'm interested in justice. For me, for Angela Torres. For the 16 other students whose careers were derailed by this. Dr. Wexler stood. Then let's build an airtight case. I'm calling an emergency Dean's Council meeting. You're going to present this evidence, and we're going to make sure Christopher Beaumont answers for what he's done. That afternoon, Marcus sat in Dean Morrison's office. The dean was a man in his 60s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of careful neutrality that came from decades of navigating academic politics. Beside him sat Dr. Wexler and 2 members of the ethics committee, and across the table, flanked by 2 lawyers in expensive suits, sat Christopher Beaumont. He looked exactly like Marcus remembered. 27 years old, blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a sweater that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. But today, the usual confidence was cracked. His eyes kept darting to the folder on Dean Morrison's desk. The folder containing printouts of access logs and modified exams. Mr. Beaumont, Dean Morrison began, you're aware of why we've called this meeting? I'm aware that I've been accused of something I didn't do, Christopher said. His voice was steady, but there was an edge underneath. Mr. Daniels claims I sabotaged his exam. That's absurd. Is it, Dr. Wexler pulled up the access log on her laptop and turned it so everyone could see. These are system logs from our digital grading platform. They show that on October 15th, at 2:47 a.m., your TA credentials were used to access Marcus Daniels's advanced pathology final exam. 12 answers were modified from correct to incorrect. System glitch, one of Christopher's lawyers said immediately. Digital platforms have errors, timestamps can be wrong. This proves nothing. Except it's not just Marcus's exam, Dr. Wexler continued. She pulled up more files. Over the past 2 years, your TA credentials have been used to access and modify exams for 17 different students, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always students of color, always changing correct answers to wrong ones. Christopher's face had gone pale. Someone must have stolen my credentials, all 17 times, over 2 years, and only targeting minority students. Dr. Wexler's voice was sharp. Mr. Beaumont, the statistical probability of that being coincidence is essentially 0. This is a witch hunt, Christopher's other lawyer interjected. My client is being targeted because of his family name. This is clearly retaliation for what? Marcus spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but carried across the room. Retaliation for what, exactly? For being ranked second in our class? For resenting that a black student from a working-class background might graduate ahead of a senator's son? Christopher's mask finally cracked. You don't belong here, none of you do. This school has standards, traditions, and then they started letting people in who only got here because of diversity quotas. Mr. Beaumont. Dean Morrison's voice cut through like a blade. I suggest you stop talking. But Christopher had momentum now, 2 years of resentment pouring out. I worked my entire life to get into this program. I earned my place. And then I have to watch people like him get preferential treatment, get praised for being inspiring, get opportunities handed to them because schools need to fill quotas. I have a 3.9 to 7 GPA, Marcus said. His voice hadn't risen, but it carried the weight of 3 years of excellence. I've published research. I've assisted on surgeries. I've earned every single grade I've received. And you tried to take that away from me because you couldn't stand the idea that I might be better than you. Christopher was standing now, his lawyers trying to pull him back into his seat. You're not better than me. You just get graded on a curve because professors feel sorry for. That's enough. Dean Morrison slammed his hand on the desk. Mr. Beaumont, you're suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. Your TA privileges are revoked. And if these allegations are substantiated, you'll face expulsion and potential criminal charges for academic fraud. You can't do this, Christopher's lead lawyer said. Senator Beaumont will. Senator Beaumont can take it up with our board of trustees. But right now, his son is facing evidence of systematic sabotage that could destroy this institution's accreditation if we don't address it immediately. Dean Morrison stood. This meeting is over. Mr. Beaumont, you're to have no contact with any students pending investigation. Violation of that order will result in immediate expulsion. As Christopher was escorted out by his lawyers, he turned back to look at Marcus one final time. Not with anger now, with something worse. Fear. Because he'd finally realized that the student he'd tried to sabotage had just become the person who would end his career. And all the family connections in the world couldn't change the evidence in those system logs. The investigation took 3 weeks. 3 weeks during which Marcus retook his advanced pathology exam under Dr. System Wexler's direct supervision and scored 98%. 3 weeks during which Jamal Richardson was called to testify about the access logs and granted immunity for his unauthorized data access. 3 weeks during which 16 other former students were contacted, students who'd withdrawn from Riverside or transferred to other programs after mysteriously failing exams they should have passed. Angela Torres came back to testify. So did David Kim, who'd left the program after failing 3 consecutive exams, despite perfect attendance and study group participation. So did Keisha Washington, who'd been told she wasn't cut out for the rigors of medical school, after failing an exam where 23 of her answers had been changed from correct to incorrect at 312A. On a night when Christopher Beaumont had TA access, the evidence was overwhelming, the pattern was undeniable, and the media caught wind of it. Senator's son, accused of systematic sabotage at prestigious medical school. Years of grade tampering exposed. Minority students targeted. Beaumont family faces scandal as medical student charged with academic fraud. Senator Beaumont tried damage control, called it a misunderstanding, claimed his son was being railroaded, threatened to pull his family's financial support from Riverside unless the charges were dropped. The school's board of trustees had an emergency meeting, and they had to choose: protect one wealthy family's reputation, or protect the integrity of their institution and the futures of countless students who'd been sabotaged. The decision came down to one vote, and it went against Christopher Beaumont. Marcus was in the library when he got the call. Dr. Wexler, her voice tight with emotion. The board voted. Christopher Beaumont is expelled, effective immediately. All students whose exams he tampered with will have their transcripts corrected and their scholarships reinstated if they choose to return. Marcus sat down heavily. It's really over? The academic case is over. But Marcus, there's something else. Christopher's lawyers are filing a defamation suit against you, claiming you orchestrated this entire thing to damage his reputation and secure your valedictorian position. That's insane. It's strategic. They can't win on the facts, so they're trying to make this about you being vindictive rather than about him being criminal. Let them sue. I have truth on my side. You have truth. They have money and lawyers, and a PR team that's already spinning this as a witch hunt against a prominent family. Dr. Wexler paused. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Off the record. Okay. Christopher Beaumont's grandfather, Edward Beaumont, was my classmate in medical school 40 years ago. And he was exactly like his grandson, brilliant but entitled, capable but cruel. And when a black student named James Morrison started outperforming him, Edward did the same thing Christopher did: sabotaged exams, changed grades, destroyed a promising career. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. What happened to James Morrison? He withdrew from school. Couldn't prove what had happened. Couldn't fight a wealthy family with connections. He ended up becoming a physician's assistant instead of a doctor. Died 10 years ago, never knowing that someone finally proved what he'd always suspected. The Beaumonts have been doing this for generations. Not just the Beaumonts. Families like them. People who believe that excellence is a birthright, instead of something earned. People who can't accept that someone from a different background might simply be better than they are. Dr. Wexler's voice was heavy. Marcus, you have a choice to make. Christopher's expulsion is public record. The academic case is closed. You can walk away now, graduate, start your residency, live your life. Or you can fight the defamation suit. Make this a bigger story. Force a conversation about how many James Morrisons there were. How many careers were destroyed by people who thought privilege meant they deserved to win even when they didn't earn it. Marcus thought about his mother, about 18 years at a nursing home, forced out by someone who changed her documentation, about Angela Torres, who'd withdrawn rather than fight, about the 16 other students whose futures had been derailed. I'm fighting, he said, not just for me, for all of them. Then you need to know what you're walking into. The Beaumont family will use every resource they have. They'll dig into your past, your family's past. They'll try to find anything that makes you look less than perfect. And when they can't find anything, they'll make things up. Let them try. If you've ever had someone try to sabotage your success because they couldn't accept that you earned it fairly, drop a comment. Tell us what happened. Because this story is about to show you that sometimes the only way to stop bullies with power is to drag their actions into the light where everyone can see them. The defamation suit was filed 3 days later. Marcus was named as defendant, along with Dr. Wexler and Jamal Richardson. The Beaumont family was suing for $10 million, claiming their son's reputation and future career had been destroyed by false allegations. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for January 15th. Marcus would need a lawyer, a good one. But good lawyers cost money he didn't have. That's when his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Daniels, my name is Patricia Chen. I'm an attorney specializing in civil rights and education law. I'd like to represent you, pro bono. Marcus blinked. Why? Because 20 years ago, I was Angela Torres. Different school, different situation, but the same story. A wealthy student sabotaged my exams because he couldn't stand that an Asian woman was going to graduate ahead of him. I couldn't prove it. I couldn't fight it. And it's haunted me ever since. Patricia's voice was firm. I became a lawyer specifically to fight these cases, and yours is the strongest case I've ever seen. So let me help you win it. You really think we can win? I know we can, because this isn't just about one exam. It's about a pattern of systemic discrimination that the Beaumont family has been getting away with for generations. And patterns leave evidence. Evidence I know how to find. Over the next month, Patricia Chen built a case that was devastating in its thoroughness. She didn't just focus on Christopher Beaumont's actions. She went deeper. She found Edward Beaumont's medical school records from 40 years ago, found mentions in faculty notes about concerns regarding James Morrison's sudden academic decline, found a letter Morrison had written to the dean never answered, alleging that someone was sabotaging his work. She found records from Christopher's undergraduate years at an Ivy League school. 3 complaints from students of color about missing lab reports and changed grades. All complaints dismissed as insufficient evidence. She interviewed 40 years of Riverside students, found patterns, stories, whispers that had never been loud enough to investigate, but had always been there. And she found something that changed everything. Christopher Beaumont's personal laptop, seized as evidence during the academic investigation, contained files he'd never deleted, spreadsheets tracking minority students' grades, notes about which students were threats to his class ranking, and most damning, a folder labeled Strategy, containing step-by-step instructions on how to access the grading system, modify exams, and avoid detection. He'd literally written a manual for systematic academic sabotage. Patricia entered all of it into evidence, and when the preliminary hearing arrived, she presented a case so comprehensive that Christopher Beaumont's lawyers asked for a recess after just 2 hours. They came back an hour later with a settlement offer. Drop the defamation suit. Issue a public apology. Pay for counseling services for all affected students, and donate $1 million to a scholarship fund for minority students in Marcus's name. Take it, Patricia advised. You've won. They're offering you everything except an admission of guilt, which they'll never give. But the message is clear. They know they can't win. Marcus looked at the settlement offer, at the dollar amount, at the public apology that would clear his name and validate every student who'd been sabotaged. No, he said. Patricia blinked. What? I don't want a settlement. I want a trial. I want Christopher Beaumont on the witness stand, under oath, forced to admit what he did. I want the world to see exactly who he is and what he did, because if we settle, this story ends quietly. The Beaumonts pay some money, issue an apology, their PR team wrote, and in 5 years, everyone forgets. But if we go to trial, if we make this public, then maybe the next James Morrison has evidence to point to. Maybe the next Angela Torres knows she's not alone. Patricia smiled. Then we go to trial. But what Marcus didn't know, what no one knew, was that Christopher Beaumont had one final card to play, and it would force Marcus to make the hardest decision of his life. 3 days before the trial was set to begin, Marcus received a package at his apartment, no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note: "Watch this before you destroy my life. Then decide if your principles are worth the cost. C.B." Marcus plugged the flash drive into his laptop. A video file. He pressed play. The video showed his mother, Diane Daniels, at work at the nursing home, dated 3 years ago. The camera angle suggested it was from a security camera, but the focus was too good, too deliberate. In the video, Diane was administering medication to an elderly patient, but the timestamp was wrong. The medication log said she'd given the medication at 8:15 p.m. The video timestamp said 8:47 p.m. Then another video, different date, Diane marking a patient's vitals as normal. But the camera showed the monitor clearly displaying elevated blood pressure that she hadn't recorded. Video after video, each one showing Diane making what looked like negligent mistakes, each one time-stamped in a way that contradicted official records. Marcus's hands were shaking as he watched. These were the documentation errors that had gotten his mother fired. The ones she'd told him were fabricated, but here was video evidence suggesting they were real. The final video file was just audio, a phone call. Christopher Beaumont's voice was clear. "Mr. Daniels, I know these videos look bad, but here's the thing, I had them fabricated. Timestamps altered, security footage edited. None of it's real. But if this goes to trial, if you drag my name through the mud, these videos go public. Your mother's reputation gets destroyed. Every patient she's ever cared for gets called into question. The nursing home gets investigated, and she probably faces criminal charges for negligent patient care." A pause. "Or you can drop the suit, take the settlement, walk away, and these videos disappear forever. Your choice. But make it fast. Trial starts in 3 days." The call ended. Marcus sat in the dark, staring at fabricated evidence that could destroy his mother's life, and realized that Christopher Beaumont had been right about one thing: principles had a cost. And sometimes that cost was everything. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, watching the fabricated videos over and over, trying to find something, anything that proved they were fake. But Christopher's people were good. The timestamps looked authentic. The footage was seamless. To anyone who didn't know better, these videos would look like evidence of serial negligence. At 3 a.m., his mother called. She never called this late unless something was wrong. "Marcus, baby, are you okay? I had the worst feeling. Mom, I need to tell you something." He explained everything. The flash drive, the videos, Christopher's threat, the choice he had to make. When he finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Diane spoke. "You're thinking about taking the settlement. I'm thinking about protecting you. Marcus Anthony Daniels, don't you dare let that boy win because you're worried about me. Mom, he's threatening criminal charges. He could destroy your career, your reputation, everything you've built. Everything I've built is already standing right where it needs to be, in you. In the fact that my son is about to graduate top of his medical school class, despite every obstacle those people threw at him." Her voice was firm now. "The Rheintentarm Continuact 4. The final crisis, continuation. Everything I've built is already standing right where it needs to be, in you. In the fact that my son is about to graduate top of his medical school class, despite every obstacle those people threw at him. Her voice was firm now, the voice that had raised him alone, that had worked double shifts, that had never once taught him to accept less than he deserved. Those videos are fake, we both know it. And if Christopher Beaumont wants to release them, let him, because fake evidence falls apart under scrutiny. But real injustice, that stays hidden until someone brave enough drags it into the light. They could charge you, let them try. I kept every single piece of documentation from that job. Every patient log, every medication record, every witness who saw me do my job perfectly for 18 years. If they want to investigate me, they'll find the truth. And the truth is that I was forced out by someone who fabricated evidence because I was too good at my job and too black for their comfort. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. I can't let you go through that. Baby, this isn't about me. This is about every student Christopher Beaumont destroyed. Every James Morrison who gave up because the system was rigged. Every Angela Torres who walked away because fighting felt too expensive. Diane's voice softened. You think I worked double shifts for 20 years so my son could learn to back down when bullies threaten him? I raised you to be better than that. To be braver than that. What if the fabricated evidence ruins you anyway? What if people believe it? Then I'll fight that battle when it comes. But Marcus, if you take that settlement, if you let Christopher Beaumont silence you with threats, then he wins. Not just against you, against every person who comes after you, because he'll know that all he has to do is threaten someone's family, and they'll fold. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You're telling me to go to trial. I'm telling you to do what's right. The rest of it, we'll handle together, like we always have. The next morning, Marcus called Patricia Chen. The settlement. We're rejecting it. Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. But there's something you need to know. He told her about the flash drive, the fabricated videos, Christopher's threat. Patricia was silent for a moment. Then, send me everything. Every file on that drive. Because if Christopher Beaumont is stupid enough to create fabricated evidence and deliver it directly to you, then he just handed us the weapon to destroy his entire case. How? Because fabrication requires tools, software, expertise, and all of that leaves digital fingerprints. If I can prove those videos were edited, if I can show the court that Christopher Beaumont created fake evidence to blackmail you into dropping the suit, then he doesn't just lose the defamation case. He faces criminal charges for evidence tampering and witness intimidation. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Hope. You can prove they're fake. I know a forensic video analyst who specializes in detecting manipulated footage. She's testified in federal cases. If those videos are fake, and we both know they are, she'll prove it. 2 days later, the forensic analyst's report arrived. 73 pages of technical analysis that boiled down to one simple conclusion. Every single video on Christopher Beaumont's flash drive had been digitally altered. Timestamps edited, patient monitor displays manipulated, audio tracks modified. The analyst had even identified the specific software used, professional-grade video editing tools that cost thousands of dollars and required expertise to use properly. Software that was registered to a company owned by Edward Beaumont, Christopher's grandfather. Patricia's smile was cold when she read that detail. They didn't just fabricate evidence. They left a paper trail leading directly back to the Beaumont family. This is better than I hoped. What happens now? Now we file a countersuit, witness intimidation, evidence tampering, attempted blackmail. and we submit this forensic report as evidence that the Beaumont family has been using these same tactics for generations." She pulled up more files. "I've been digging into Edward Beaumont's past. 40 years ago, when James Morrison was forced out of medical school, there were rumors of fabricated evidence, patient complaints that didn't exist, witnesses who couldn't be found. Nothing was ever proven because Morrison didn't have resources to investigate. But now we do. Now we do. And Marcus, here's the beautiful part. Once we file this countersuit, the Beaumonts have two choices. They can withdraw their defamation case entirely and hope we don't pursue criminal charges. Or they can go to trial and watch us expose 40 years of systematic fraud, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. They'll withdraw. Smart money says yes. But I'm hoping they're arrogant enough to fight. Because if this goes to trial, we don't just win your case. We create precedent. We establish a pattern. We make it possible for every future victim to point to this case and say, this is what systematic sabotage looks like, and this is how you prove it. The countersuit was filed the next morning. By afternoon, Christopher Beaumont's lawyers were requesting an emergency meeting. They met in a conference room at Patricia's law firm. Christopher's legal team, 3 lawyers who collectively cost more than most people earned in a decade, sat on one side. Patricia, Marcus, and Dr. Wexler sat on the other. The lead attorney, a man named Harrison Blackwell, looked like he'd aged 10 years since the preliminary hearing. "My clients wish to propose a resolution." "We're listening," Patricia said. "Christopher Beaumont will withdraw the defamation suit with prejudice. He will issue a public statement accepting full responsibility for the grade tampering. He will pay all affected students' legal fees and counseling costs, and the Beaumont family will endow a scholarship fund with $5 million. "Not enough," Patricia said. Blackwell blinked. "Excuse me. $5 million doesn't begin to address the scope of harm. 17 students over 2 years. 40 years of similar patterns, if we include Edward Beaumont's history. Fabricated evidence used to blackmail my client. Witness intimidation, evidence tampering." Patricia slid a document across the table. "Here's our counter-offer." Blackwell read it. His face went pale. "This is outrageous. This is justice. $20 million scholarship fund. Public admission of wrongdoing spanning 2 generations. Criminal investigation into Edward Beaumont's activities during his medical school years, and Christopher Beaumont permanently barred from practicing medicine in any capacity. We'll never agree to that. Then we go to trial, and we present evidence that the Beaumont family has been using fabricated evidence and witness intimidation for 40 years. We call every student who was sabotaged. We call James Morrison's family. We call my forensic analyst, who will testify that your client attempted to blackmail Marcus Daniels with fake videos." Patricia leaned forward. "And then we call Christopher Beaumont to the witness stand and ask him, under oath, how many other families he's threatened, how many other students he's sabotaged, how many careers he's destroyed because he couldn't accept that people who don't look like him might simply be better than he is." Blackwell looked at his colleagues. At Christopher Beaumont, who sat silent and pale. At the document that would end not just Christopher's career, but potentially expose decades of family wrongdoing. "We need time to consult with our clients." "You have 24 hours, Patricia said. "After that, we file a motion to move forward with trial. And we make sure every major news outlet has copies of our evidence." 22 hours later, the Beaumont family's response arrived. They accepted every term. The $20 million scholarship fund, the public admission, the criminal investigation, Christopher's permanent ban from practicing medicine, and one addition they volunteered: Edward Beaumont would step down from the Riverside Medical College Board of Trustees, effective immediately. Marcus stood in Patricia's office, reading the settlement agreement, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. "We won," he said. "You won," Patricia corrected. "You and every student who comes after you, because this case is now public record, every detail, every piece of evidence, every admission of wrongdoing. The next time someone tries to sabotage a student of color, there's precedent. There's proof that it happens, how it happens, and what the consequences are." Dr. Wexler, who'd been quietly reviewing the agreement, looked up. "Marcus, do you know what this means? $20 million in scholarships. That's enough to fund full rides for dozens of students every year. Students who might not otherwise be able to afford medical school. Students who might be the next target for someone like Christopher Beaumont. Students like Angela Torres," Marcus said quietly. "Like David Kim. Like all the others who were driven out." "Exactly, and they can come back. With the grade tampering corrected, with their transcripts cleared, they can reapply. Finish what they started." Marcus thought about that. About Angela Torres, who'd cried in Jamal's office, who'd withdrawn, rather than fight a battle she thought she'd lose. About David Kim and Keisha Washington, and all the others who'd been told they weren't good enough, when the truth was they'd been sabotaged. "I want to call them," Marcus said. "Personally, I want to tell them they can come back, that it's not over, that they won." Patricia smiled. "That's exactly what you should do." But there was one more call Marcus needed to make first. He dialed the number for Riverside Nursing and Rehabilitation, asked for the administrator, and when the woman answered, Marcus introduced himself. "My name is Marcus Daniels. Your facility fired my mother, Diane Daniels, 2 years ago based on fabricated documentation. I'm calling to inform you that we have forensic evidence proving that the evidence used to terminate her was deliberately falsified using the same techniques the Beaumont family has been using for decades." Silence on the decadent other end. "My mother doesn't want her job back. She's happy where she is, but she does want an apology, a written one, admitting that she was wrongfully terminated, clearing her record completely. And if you're not willing to do that voluntarily, then we're prepared to file suit. And given that we just won a landmark case against the Beaumont family, I imagine our chances are pretty good. Mr. Daniels, I wasn't aware. Now you are. You have 72 hours to send the apology to my attorney." He gave them Patricia's contact information. "After that we file." He hung up before the administrator could respond. Patricia was grinning. "You're getting good at this. I learned from the best." That evening, Marcus sat with his mother in her apartment. The same apartment where he'd told her about the fabricated videos, where she'd told him to fight anyway. "They're sending the apology," Marcus said. "In writing. Clearing your record. Admitting they were wrong." Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, not a bitter laugh, a genuine one. 18 years. 18 years of working my ass off. And all it took was my son becoming a lawyer's nightmare to get them to admit they were wrong. You taught me to be a nightmare, to people who deserve it. I taught you to stand up for yourself. There's a difference." She pulled him into a hug. "I'm proud of you, baby. Not because you won. Because you fought, even when it cost you. Even when it scared you. That's real courage. I was terrified. Good. Brave people aren't people who don't feel fear. Brave people are people who feel fear and do the right thing anyway. They sat together in comfortable silence until Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Angela Torres. I saw the news. Is it true? Can I really come back? Marcus typed back. It's true. Come back. Finish what you started. And this time, nobody can stop you. The response came immediately. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. But Marcus did know, because he'd been one exam away from having his own dreams destroyed. One fabricated score away from losing everything he'd worked for. And now he had the chance to make sure it never happened to anyone else. 4 months later, Marcus Daniels stood at the podium in Riverside Medical College's auditorium, wearing the gold cords that marked him as class valedictorian. The same honor Christopher Beaumont had tried to steal by sabotaging his exam. The auditorium was packed. His mother sat in the front row, wearing her best dress, crying tears she didn't bother hiding. Dr. Wexler sat on stage with the faculty, smiling with genuine pride. Patricia Chen sat in the third row, already working on her next case but taking time to witness this victory. And scattered throughout the audience were faces Marcus had come to know over the past 4 months. Angela Torres, who'd re-enrolled and was now thriving in her 3rd year. David Kim, who'd returned and discovered he loved pathology even more than he remembered. Keisha Washington, who'd been accepted into a surgery residency at Johns Hopkins. 17 students, 17 careers restored. Marcus looked out at them and began his speech. 4 months ago, I almost wasn't here. Not because I wasn't good enough. Not because I didn't work hard enough. But because someone decided that a black student from a working-class background didn't deserve to be valedictorian of this medical school. The audience was silent. That person changed my correct answers to incorrect ones at 2:47 in the morning, hoping I'd never notice, hoping I'd just accept that I'd failed and move on. But he made one mistake. He assumed I'd be alone, that I wouldn't have people who believed in me, who fought for me, who refused to let injustice win just because it was convenient. Marcus gestured to his mother, to Dr. Wexler, to Patricia. The truth is, I'm not standing here because I'm special. I'm standing here because I had people who saw what was happening and refused to look away. And because of that, 17 other students got their futures back. 17 people who'd been sabotaged, driven out, told they weren't good enough. They're here now, or on their way back. And that matters more than any individual grade or honor. He paused. But here's what I learned through all of this. Racism isn't always loud. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it's just someone at a keyboard at 3 a.m., quietly erasing your future one answer at a time. Sometimes it's a supervisor changing your documentation. Sometimes it's a system that assumes you got where you are through quotas instead of excellence. And the only way to fight that kind of racism is with evidence, with courage, with the refusal to accept that things are just the way they are, because they're not, they're the way we allow them to be. And we have the power to change them. Marcus looked directly at the camera recording the ceremony, at the live stream that would be watched by thousands of students across the country. If you're a student of color and you're watching this, if you've ever failed an exam you studied hard for, if you've ever felt like the system is rigged against you, document everything, keep records, find allies, and fight, because you deserve to be here. You earned your place. And nobody, not even people with family, money and connections, and the assumption that they deserve to win, gets to take that away from you. The auditorium erupted in applause, standing ovation. Marcus saw his mother crying, saw Dr. Wexler wiping her eyes, saw Angela Torres and David Kim and Keisha Washington on their feet, clapping like their lives depended on it, because in a way they did. Because Marcus's fight had become their fight, and his victory had become theirs. After the ceremony, after the photos and the congratulations and the promises to stay in touch, Marcus found himself alone in the now empty auditorium. Just him and the podium where he'd given the most important speech of his life. "Congratulations, Dr. Daniels." Marcus turned. A man stood in the doorway. Late 70s, black, using a cane but standing with the posture of someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting battles. He looked familiar, but Marcus couldn't place him. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No, but I knew what happened to you, because it happened to me 40 years ago." The man walked slowly down the aisle. "My name is James Morrison, and I'm the student Edward Beaumont sabotaged when we were in medical school together." Marcus felt his breath catch. "Dr. Wexler told me about you. I'm not a doctor, never became one, because back then, I didn't have the evidence you had, didn't have the resources, didn't have people who believed me." James reached the stage. "I became a physician's assistant, had a good career, helped a lot of people. But every single day, I wondered what might have been if someone had fought for me the way people fought for you. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be grateful. And be vigilant." James pulled something from his pocket, a worn envelope. "This is the letter I wrote to the dean 40 years ago, alleging that Edward Beaumont had sabotaged my work. It was never answered. I want you to have it." Marcus took the envelope with trembling hands. "Why?" "Because your fight didn't just save 17 students. It validated 40 years of my knowing I wasn't crazy, that I didn't fail because I wasn't good enough. I failed because someone made me fail. And now, finally, there's proof, there's precedent. There's a record that says James Morrison was right all along." Tears were streaming down James's face now. "Thank you," he said simply, "for finishing the fight I couldn't finish, for being brave enough to take on a system that crushes people like us, for making sure the next generation doesn't have to wonder if they're good enough, because they are. We always were." Marcus embraced him. Two men, separated by 40 years, connected by the same battle. "What will you do now?" James asked when they separated. "I start my residency at Massachusetts General in 2 weeks. Surgery. I want to save lives. You already have. More than you know." James left, walking slowly out of the auditorium, leaving Marcus alone with a 40-year-old letter that represented every student who'd been sabotaged before anyone was willing to listen. Marcus opened the envelope carefully. The letter was handwritten, dated 1985. "To whom it may concern, I am writing to report systematic academic sabotage. My exams are being changed. My grades are being manipulated. I have no proof except my own knowledge that the answers I wrote were correct. I am begging for someone to investigate. I know how this sounds. I know I'm just one student making accusations against a member of a prominent family, but I am telling the truth. And someday, I hope someone believes that truth enough to do something about it. Respectfully, James Morrison." Marcus folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his graduation robe, right over his heart. Someday had come, 40 years late, but it had come, and James Morrison had finally been heard.